Hello and welcome to episode 27 of AFC Fylde Still We Rise here on Football Manager 2020. Today's edition is a tactical breakdown. In the last episode we looked at our transfers and who we've brought in to compete in Sky Bet League 2 during 2021. That's Fylde's first season in the Football League. What we found was it's very much evolution and not revolution. The players that we brought in are there to basically complement the core nucleus of the squad that we had last year. And the tactical setup is very much in the same vein. So we haven't changed a great deal, but I thought it was important just to let us have a look at what exactly we're setting up with, ready for the season ahead. There were last season tweaks mid-season and of course during pre-season. Now we've started to look at the different roles and changing some settings. I'll go through it from the back. We're starting off with our goalkeeper now on a sweeper keeper but a defend mentality. That is a different setting than last season when he was on support. And often we'd found both with Montgomery and Dan Lavercombe is that they were slightly too far outside their 6-yard box, and that left them vulnerable on the counter, especially when teams pressed from a corner, won the ball back, ran up the other end of the pitch. Sometimes our goalkeeper was just a little bit too flat-footed and out of his goal, so hopefully that sort of presses him back into it and makes it a little bit more difficult for the opposition to get round. The fullbacks are sticking with their wing-back setting on support. That's staying this season. Last season it did sort of change ever so slightly depending on if Mark Yates was playing on the left wing as an inside forward. So he would be on a support setting, and then our left back, usually Andy Taylor, would be an attacking wing back. That's changed because we're sticking with our wingers on attack. We've got now, because Yates has retired, we've got Defan Green come in. Jack Muldoon is a replacement on the right for Kozolo. All four of our selections are attacking wingers. They play really well in that role. So having our fullbacks going forward too much is just not something that we need at the moment. We've lost our ball-playing defender. Normally, Alex Whitmore's position here on the right of the two would be a ball-playing defender, but both him and Neil Byrne, our club captain, have struggled to sort of cope with that. They don't really have the attributes. So we put them back to a central defender on defend, which both Whitmore and Neil Byrne are very much suited to, as you can see. They both struggle in this ball-playing defender role, basically mostly because of their first touch and technique, if we're honest. But that's not what I want defenders for. I want defenders to defend, head it, kick it, slide, get rid. Scott Duxbury's back from his loan at Chorley, so he's going to offer us something different on the left than Andy Taylor. Even on an attack setting, Taylor was quite conservative. It's no surprise given his age and his experience and his attributes, whereas Duxbury, I think, will be a more supporting sort of full-back on the overlap. Just ahead in the what I call a 4-3-3, but the game calls a 4-1-4-1, is Ryan Crosdale in the deep-lying playmaker role. That's probably the best one for him. I find that if I put him on a ball-winning midfielder or even a defensive midfielder, he just gets sent off. Certainly, that's my experience. Now, he will have sent off Lewis Montrose for that position, but now also has sort of competition, the likes of James Cragen and Romario Vieira, who will be available in the coming season. New signing. Just ahead of that, we've got Tom Walker in the advanced playmaker on a support setting. Absolutely perfect for that role. Played it really well last season. No issues there whatsoever. Next to him, though, was a bit of a difficult one because most of the time it was Nick Horton, but we changed the role quite a lot beside him to get the best out of Walker. We tried the box-to-box with Dan Bradley. That wasn't too bad. Anything like a deep line playmaker, ball-winning midfielder was a waste of time. I think at one time we tried a roaming playmaker, which was just not worth the effort. So we settled on this central midfielder role, which was majority at the time Nick Horton. It's on an attack setting, but I suspect during the season that may slip back into a support role if we start getting caught too high up the pitch. We're playing better teams this year, which means we'll have less opportunities to go forward and we'll have more time spent in our own half recovering the ball. If Nick Horton is needed for that sort of position and that sort of area, then we will have to change this setting. There is, of course, always the opportunity to move him back to form a 2 with Crowsdale. Now, whether that's something that we can do and put him in perhaps as a defensive midfielder or even an anchor man, just to give it a bit of stability. Teams seem to struggle to break down this sort of setup where you have 2 players as a defensive midfielders. So that could be something later on in the season that we employ if we are really struggling. But as it stands, Horton is on the attacking role. With Tom Walker getting on the ball, he tends to travel with it. He goes to go forward and then he pops it off to either Proctor up front or Kozolo on the right. The cross will then come in, usually from Kozolo, perhaps from an overlapping fullback. And we want Nick Horton to be one of those getting on the end of it in the box. The 2 wingers, Jordan Williams, Matty Kozolo, are first choices as they were last season. But as mentioned, we do have Devon Green as a potential to come in and replace them. We've also got Jack Muldoon, who did really well for us at the end of last season. Up front, we did try a few different roles for our striker. A deep line forward, false 9. We tended to settle on this target man role, which is Jamie Proctor's strength, and also Chris Porter's, who would be his replacement directly in the team. One of the things that I've found, certainly playing Football Manager, is that the first 10 games of the season, that's when you're kind of figuring out your familiarity. The players are getting used to the formation. This is the majority of the reason why we haven't changed it a great deal. We've sort of stayed with what we know, and that hopefully will give us a bit of advantage going into a new league, because they're having to get used to us. We are quite used to the way we play. So hopefully that's something that gives us a bit of an advantage and a bit of an edge against the established League 2 clubs. There is, of course, our second tactic. This is our sort of desperation attack setting, and as you can see, the familiarity goes right down. Maybe on to that first one. See how it takes a nosedive there. We hardly played it last season, and hopefully we want to play it this season, because it does take our wingers out of the game, which was one of the struggles that we had. In terms of the possession tactic, the mentality is attacking. We found certainly last season that we would recover the ball in defence with either Crowsdale or one of our 4 defenders, and we would immediately go forward, usually through Walker. That tended to work. I don't know why we change it. I do tend to flex it during games, especially after scoring a goal. I will put the lads on defensive just for a little bit, and then hopefully the opposition don't strike back immediately. In terms of possession, there are a couple of changes. The attacking width is now standard. We're not going too far wide. We've taken off the pass into space setting, because I think we could probably look for feet now. Other than that, we haven't changed a great deal on this screen. There's always a temptation for me to play for set pieces because we are so good at them, but we tend to win them anyway without. Low crosses are the order of the day. Jamie Proctor's not bad in the air, but he's a better finisher than he is a header. So it makes sense for us to get those low crosses in. Both Kozolo, Williams, and indeed the replacement wingers are very capable of delivering those. In transition, we haven't changed anything on this screen. So counter press is in place. When possession has been won, we counter, and we distribute the goalkeeper's possession to the fullbacks, and he's instructed to roll it out, which just, I think, gives him a bit of a added edge in retaining possession. I think if you're kicking it, certainly long, or even throwing it long, there's always a chance that the opposition are going to steal in and set about the counter attack. Out of position is where things have changed. Last season we had a really high line of engagement for the forwards. I've brought them back in a little bit because I am concerned that they're just going to get cut off. The standard defensive line has been utilised. Last season it was a higher one. Because we're playing against better players, it does concern me that they'll get in behind us. So we are using the offside trap because that just gives us a few yards just advantage over that defensive line. Defensive width is narrow because that's where the goal is, and then we use tighter marking to keep our opponents on the edge. That is our tactical breakdown. These are the tactics that we use for the season. In terms of individual player instructions, I don't do a whole lot because, well, we were in the National League last season, and you don't want to overwhelm the players with too many individual instructions. What we tend to do is we tend to have one of our defenders on a man-mark job. So upcoming we're going to play Kidderminster in a friendly. Chances are we are going to put Alex Whitmore to mark Ashley Chambers. That just leaves Jameson free to mop up where necessary. The other player instructions, we had some for our goalkeeper, just to remind him not to mess about. So his passing is shorter, and we're going to take fewer risks with him. With our wingers, they were told at some point, we changed them slightly, where we had them to stay wider and get further forward. He was also told at some point to shoot less often. So as you can see, that was ticked before I messed about with it. Because what tended to happen with Matty Kozlow is that he would shoot from basically any angle, and it often ended up in row Z. So he was told not to shoot as much. Promptly in the following game, he scored a goal. So just shows you how much I know. We had a corner tutorial on the channel, so I won't really go into set pieces. Do check that out. We scored 27 goals from corners last season, and in total we scored 60 from set pieces. So there must have been another 15 or so from indirect free kicks. Everything has just been updated because James Cragen has come back off loan from Arbroath, so he now features with the corners and free kicks. He's right-footed. And then we've also brought on Scott Duxbury, both take throw-ins and corners, that sort of thing. Our captain will likely remain as Neil Byrne. No real reason to change anything like that. Ryan Crosdale, his backup. Those two tend to be in the team, and that's what I think is important. So we're not really going to change anything as far as that's concerned. And that is our tactical breakdown for today. A bit of a whistle-stop tour. You can see it all on screen. If you need to implement it into your game and have a go, see what happens, do feel free. Last season we lost 2 league games, both against Maidenhead. So it was a really successful setup. And this is what I was talking about, evolution, not revolution. There's no reason for us to change massively. Little bits will change. So for example, James Cragen plays really well as a box-to-box midfielder. Despite, it has to be said, his stats not suggesting that. I happen to know that from a previous save. So there is a chance that he will come into the team at some point, and we'd have to change the role here around the midfield area, where we currently find Nick Horton. The other thing is that Crosdale is probably our best defensive midfielder. If we were to bring anybody else in, as you can see with Romario Vieira, we may need to have a look at what role he's playing, although he is currently injured and returning to full training tomorrow following a stint of rehabilitation. That is the tactics that we're going to approach the season with. Hopefully it works out for us. If not, we'll be relegated back down to the National League. But this is what we're sticking with to start the season. As I said, we do have the second tactic that I think it's important that the players learn 2 different tactics just in case. But we hardly utilised this last season. We just didn't need to. So it would be interesting to see in the coming weeks whether we actually need to use this one or we can cope with just making changes to our number 1 tactic. The next episode will be on Friday, and in that one we will play a pre-season game. I think we said originally it was going to be Burton. So I'm going to play these games. Let's get the tactical familiarity back up, and then we welcome some league clubs to Mill Farm just to get us ready for that first day, the 1st of August against Morecambe. I shall see you then.